you, thank you.
Is this mic, you want me to just do with this one? No, use this. Use that, okay. Is that one on for you? Good? All right. All right, so as you said, my name is JoshInGeneral. There's my Twitter handle and email if you guys find this interesting and want to provide feedback. Pretty much everything was already talked about here. Just a clarification though, I just want to say that this was all done before my current job and is all my own research. But what we're going to talk about today is essentially definitions in law for spamming and how you can understand if you're doing a marketing campaign, how you can be protected about not making sure that you're spamming your users, as well as if you are being spammed, what you can do in order to protect yourself. Techniques for tracking, so tracking spammers. And then I'll also show some tools and a demo of a tool that I've put together in order to be able to spam your users in order to figure out what they're clicking on and what emails they're opening that they maybe shouldn't be opening. And then I'll also talk about a Nigerian spammer that hit me up on Craigslist when I was selling an Xbox and how I was able to track down his IP address and figure out some things about him and how you can go about doing that yourself. All right, so there's actually a comic called Cyanide and Happiness. Kind of outlines the general categories of most commonly seen spam. So you have girls, 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 which probably all of you have seen. Girls trying to get you to go on webcams and talk to them and spend money and all that kind of fun stuff. You have the Nigerian prince, which is the infamous age-old spammer. And then you have fake pills that make your dick bigger, which we all need, right? Oh, no, yes, yeah, ugly. And then of course more girls because, you know, the internet doesn't have girls and you don't know where to find them in the real world. All right, so what is spam? Spam is the unsolicited commercial email to a large number of addresses. It originally came from the Monty Python skit, talking about spam, 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 bacon spam, where they had essentially spam on every single thing on the breakfast menu. It was first known to be used in 1994, and it comes from the word spiced ham, which is SP and then AM, so spam put together. And as we know, everyone doesn't like spam. So phishing. What is the difference between phishing and spamming? So phishing is the act of defrauding someone of their financial online information as posing as a legitimate company. It comes from an origin of a word fishing, so real and raw, getting your fish, eating that. And then also the word phreaking, which in the olden days was essentially defrauding the phone company in order to make long-distance phone calls or free calls in general. So you have your blue box, your red box, black box, all those things. And putting together, it causes the PH phishing word, as you can see in the slide above. So what exactly is spam and what is phishing from our example from the Cyanide and Happiness? So as an interpretation by myself, I would say that the girls getting webcams is spam because it's sent to a mass number of people. The phishing is the Nigerian prince because they're trying to get money out of you, you know, in some shape or form, or get your credit card information or financial information. The dick getting larger is probably a phishing and spam thing because it's sent to a large number of people and they're hoping that you're going to buy the pills online and they're probably going to be just water pills or you're never going to receive them at all and they're just going to take your credit card information and move on. And then girls, again, more spam. So I've tried to put a Venn diagram together in order to kind of like group different spamming campaigns and phishing campaigns and see how they correlate and how they might be different. So the first one I want to talk about is like the user group where you have spear phishing. So spear phishing is essentially sending to a targeted user, maybe be a CEO of a company or a particular system admin, or it might be a group of people. So all the system admins or the people that are in charge of, you know, running a certain portion of the network that you're wanting to target. Some of the combinations that could be used with that is called DNS-based phishing. You have session hijacking and man-in-the-middle attacks. So what would happen is for example, there are BGP routes, which essentially are the way that internet is sent over the internet from mass continents and various different countries. And there have been instances where major corporations and major companies have been contracted by foreign companies to actually grab this information. So for example, there was an instance where China had a company that would essentially monitor these DNS. And so what could happen is they're monitoring all your traffic, and they would want to do a spamming campaign if they wanted to see, for example, you know, when these particular group of users were logging into LinkedIn or Facebook or, you know, some financial institution. So they would send a spear phishing campaign, watch the traffic, grab that information, and then move on with their attack. And through that, they could essentially get your usernames, passwords through the session hijacking, or the man-in-the-middle attack. Does that make sense? I know that's kind of like a little confusing. So then you have ones that are also phishing and spamming. Remember how I said that there might be a group of users that are sent? So like you might have a thing called whaling, which is essentially sent to C-level executives. So your CISO, your CEO, your CTFO, all of them might get a group of emails that are trying to get them to log into maybe their mail on a fake website, and so that they can read that. So that would be spamming because it's a group, but then it's also phishing because you're trying to get the financial information of those individuals. You might also have malware-based, which you just send an exe or a 0-day. You also have watering hole attacks, where essentially you're trying to get people to come to a certain website, and that website has an exploit on it that would actually allow you to get into their systems. Then you have the Nigerian prints that send out to a large group of people getting financial information. And then fake logins. So sometimes you'll say, hey, you have a new package at UPS, log into your UPS account, and they try to get that. So a lot of times that's sent out to a large group of people trying to do fraud once again. And quickly on the spam side, there are things such as search engine optimization spam. So for example, you might have happywidgets.com, and you want this to be on the front page of Google. So what you do is essentially you take Google, and you see what the search engine would be returning as a URL. So google.com query happywidgets.com, and you send that to a particular user. They click on it thinking it's something else, a free iPod or whatever. They click on it, and Google sees, oh, well, someone else is searching for this website in particular, and that increases the ranking as well as the other analytics as well. So you can essentially move your site up to the front and make Google think, hey, there might be 10,000 people clicking on this site, so it's something important, so we should move it to the front page. You have pornographic material. A lot of times pornographic sites, if you subscribe to one, you'll subscribe to 1 million. You just get spammed and all kind of stuff. Also, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, mailing lists with no unsubscribe. So if you're getting a whole bunch of mail and you can't unsubscribe from them, then that could also be considered spam because you can't get off that list. And then finally, impression-based advertising. So you might see this in like political campaigns where people are just spamming you saying, vote for this candidate, or the candidate on the opposite side, they send you something saying, Robert Willis is a really bad person, don't vote for him. And it's not necessarily the goal is to actually click on something, it's trying to demean that person, and they're just trying to get the, feeling and your mind and psyche, associated with that. So mediums at which spam can go through, you have Facebook, you have text messages, you have the regular emails. There's been spams on Twitter and other messaging sites as such, where it'll say, hey, saw a picture of you online, click on this, and it's actually spam. There's also been an interesting one that's been starting to appear on YouTube, where essentially they'll say, hey, the YouTube video has been taken down, click on the description in order to see the actual video. The video has not actually been taken down. It's actually a spamming attack in order to try and get you to click on that link. So what is happening in the legal realm in order to protect you from this? So in 2003, there was the CAN-SPAM Act. I don't know where they come up with the acronyms, but essentially it's just, they put a bunch of words together and make it something that people can remember, hopefully the congressman. So it stands for Controlling the Assault of Non-Solicited Pornographic and Marketing Act of 2003. Or whatever. All right, so I'm going to break it down. There's 3 parts. There are some things in here that can help you, and actually we'll show a few court cases, because when you're ever looking at legal information, the way to figure out is it valid, is it working, is to look at court cases and how did they rule in the favor of that law or the anti-fraud law. Disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, I don't have any experience in legal, I just read things and I can interpret them and I can put them out there and you guys can read and hopefully understand as well. So if you're going to actually go through with this and take the time to do it, get a lawyer or someone that actually understands how to defend yourself in this case. So the first thing, 7702 of the US Code 15, essentially says we're going to define the basic concepts of a commercial electronic email. So essentially that is a promotion. Whoops. Are we still good? Okay. Commercial or promotion of a service or a product. So Best Buy sending you a message saying, hey, check out this new Asus laptop promotion. It does not include the forwarded messages that your mother sends you out of like her list of mailing lists and crap like that. It also does not include things like safety or warranty or confirmation of purchase. So even though you get 3 emails from Amazon saying, hey, congratulations, you bought a $200 new solid state hard drive, it's not spam. They have a reason to send you that information because you actually purchased something from them. It could also be a reference to a company or a product. So we'll talk about this in a minute, but like third-party companies that advertise for other companies, that could be a commercial spamming campaign as well. It also kind of vaguely starts to define the header information and how you should not spoof that. So things like IP addresses, destination, email, domain, all has to be valid when you're doing a commercial thing, or there can be prosecution. So like I said, 7702 is definitions, 7703 is prosecution, and 770 is what not to do. So 7703, you can be prosecuted for illegally harvesting emails. So paste bin dumps of emails, any kind of things that you purchase from someone. Basically, any way that you harvest the email without the consent of the user adding it to your database is considered illegal. Randomly generating, so if you know that the first name dot last name is the format that they're using at that organization, you can't just randomly go through baby names and random last names and just send tons of emails. That's also illegal. You also have to make sure that the information is not offensive and that the advertised internet domain name is correct. So you can't use false information with your ICANN domain. You can use the privacy settings that some services offer, but if you're faking that, then you could be prosecuted as well. And then this particular bill was also the first one to introduce a reference that spam is for pornographic information. It has viruses, worms, and malicious Trojans and such. And so that's the first time that there was actually a reference in a legal sense that this is kind of what we see spam as becoming. And just as you can see, these are progressions. So this is how it got formed. It also says that the Department of Justice can allocate existing funds and existing resources in order to prosecute spammers. So they don't have to set up a new task force. They can if they want to, but they can essentially take what they have, and go after spammers right away. There's a 5-year fine, 5-year imprison sentence that can be levied for spammers, and also $16,000 per instance. If you send 100 messages and they're all spam, that's a lot of money that you're going to be out if they are able to prosecute you on all of those accounts. So 7704, and the interest that I wanted to go over and why I'm staying on this is because you as a company may do marketing campaigns. It's important that you read this because if someone levied something against you, you want to make sure that you're not doing this because you could be seen as a spammer and prosecuted. So the key thing is don't use false or misleading header information. So I said that already. They define that as destination or source information. Making sure that you identify yourself as a company. You're not spoofing IP addresses through like Tor or anything like that. Don't use deceptive subject lines. So if you're selling something that's an iPhone, don't say that you're selling Android products or that it's something that it's not. Identify the message as an ad. So if it's your local grocery thing that you're promoting, say that as such. Tell the recipients where you're located. So you may have seen this a lot of times on emails. At the very, very bottom, they have a physical, brick and mortar store that you can actually get an address for. Make sure that that's correct and that's relevant. Also tell them how to opt out, and you have to honor out the opt-out reply within 10 days. Now you have a time where you can essentially, say, hey, I'm doing this, I'm taking care of it, but you have to respond to them within the 10-day window. And also monitor what others are doing in your behalf. So third-party agencies that you outsource your marketing team to, make sure that they're following these rules because you could be liable because they're using your name and you've licensed them to do so. So phishing laws, those were all, the previous ones I spoke about were for spamming. There's not exactly a definite phishing law. There are some different laws that can be associated with targeting phishers. Most notably is the 18 USC 208 code. So that's essentially targeting false identification information. So if you're falsely identifying yourself or you've stolen information in some shape or form, purchased it, email addresses, all that, and you're using that, then essentially you could also face fines. The same way is if you are grabbing that person's information and you don't have reason to do that. For example, credit cards. So if you have a form that you send to someone, you trick them into giving you your credit card information, and you clone that credit card, that's a false document. And so you could be prosecuted under this law. Also transferring that stolen information. So if you have it stored on a server and you transfer it to your local machine, the person that transferred it to that local machine essentially could be liable. Also possessing 5 or more of these documents essentially allows them to go ahead and start prosecuting you. And the producing, transferring, or processing of the making equipment. So if you have a credit card maker and you paid that $10,000 or $15,000 in order to get one of those equipment and you're using it for this, that's also cause for them to roll you up this code. The other thing is any attempt to do any of this. So if you, essentially, this is kind of a sticky one. If you're researching this and you have the documents on how to do spamming and phishing, essentially if they had other cause, they can roll that in under the probable cause that you were trying to figure out how to do spamming, and you're trying to figure out how to do credit card fraud and rebuild things like that. Got a question over here.
What was the training exercise doing it with the permission of the domain?
So the question was, what if you were doing it as a training exercise or doing it with the permission of the domain owner? It is very vague, and that is the problem with the phishing laws. There's not a definite one that targets the phishing laws. Got a question over here in the green shirt. So from what I've researched, it's actually the person that did it. It's not the hosting company, as long as they respond and take good action in order to remove that information. So if you were, essentially had cross-site scripting or SQL injection and you had that hosted on your hosting provider, or if you were a hosting provider in and of itself and you had clients doing that, if when someone says, hey, at abuse.hosting.com, and that actually brings us to our next point, hey, that's being hosted there, and you take a good action in order to remove that, I'm not seeing you as being liable for that. And that's from what I've seen in the research that I read. So I'm glad you asked that question. So essentially what you can do a lot of times is you can go into the whois data and you can look at a domain and you can see that there's abuse, there's security, and then there might be some other admin email. And you are able to email those, and those should be respond. Even with the whois privacy settings, what they do is they proxy that email to someone, and then they can take care of getting that spam or phishing campaign removed. However, if they don't, then yes, it would be up to the hosting provider to defend themselves for why they didn't do such. You as individuals can also report this to the FTC, as we know with government agencies. I don't know how well this works. If it's a small campaign, they may or may not take action. If it's a bigger campaign and they've seen a whole bunch of reports, it might be helpful. For getting spam on your phone, there's actually a really cool thing that you can do, 7726. Most carriers, what will happen is essentially you'll forward the message to that. They'll send you a text message back, say what was the number that you received this on. You text that in, and then they'll put it in their spam database, and they'll actually block that number from their network. So that's something that it's come about that's actually pretty, it probably is going to be more useful than using the FTC. Also, the other thing that you can check too is local laws. There's a lot of local laws that have started arising for this, and that might actually help you. That being said, moving on to like international and stuff, it's sometimes difficult to prosecute. That being said, there have been some cases where these actually have been prosecuted. So in this particular case, there was a Russian individual that was responsible for a third of what the FBI categorizes as spam messages. His name was Oleg, and they caught him back in, I think 2009, essentially, and they said that they were going to prosecute him under the CAN spam. That being said, his origin and whereabouts were quickly unknown. Yeah, as happens. So another individual, Davis Wolfgang Hawk, was prosecuted under AOL. So essentially he was using the AOL messaging interface in order to do spamming. They also prosecuted him under the CAM Spam Act as well. He kind of disappeared as well. So, but they were able to successfully get a $12.8 million injunction on him. So each of the individual campaigns, he was getting essentially $500,000 a day in order to, do that campaign, and that's how much he was making. So that's pretty impressive. Eddie Davidson was an active spammer. He created a whole company around spamming from 2002 into 2007. He, however, was able to get caught and received a 21-month and $200,000 fine for his spamming. So it is working, but it is got to be something that they're going to want to actually prosecute and has a big enough volume to make it worthwhile. That being said, there's actually individuals that are taking their own spam and taking it into their own hands in order to prosecute. So 419eater.com is essentially a spammer website that targets Nigerians. Nigerians know English, but not very well. As you can see in these photos, they essentially tricked them into sending these pictures with the promise that they would actually send the money. So this one here is a gentleman in a KKK uniform saying, "I practice brutality," holding a sheep, and he sent that picture with the interpretation that he was going to get a set amount of money the same way that he was expecting to extract from individuals in America. This other gentleman thinks that Coke rules with the hope that he would get money. And it targets the 419 Fraud Act that was put in place in Nigeria. That being said, the problem with Nigeria is that the government and the Nigerian central bank is actually involved in some of these scams, and so they're making money off of it, so it doesn't always really get prosecuted. But if you guys have some time, that's a really funny website, and there's a lot of stuff on there. I don't know really how much it actually helps, but it does embarrass the spammers, and there are some things on actually Vice News that have gone through and they've found spammers and interviewed people that do that and really embarrass them pretty well. Moving on to a little more technical things as far as how you can actually track spammers and either help your sensors or maybe if you feel that it's something that you can actually prosecute. I've got some techniques here. So the first thing is email headers we're going to go over, online stat counters, embedded images, attachments that can call home, and email verification scripts with Telnet and Netcat to the mail server so you can verify that the email is actually correct, and email scripts using Apache and IIS logs. So really quick, essentially, when you send an email using a particular client and you're not using like a web client or something like that, your email is actually transmitting your IP address. And as you can see here in the header information, this was an email that I sent. It has my IP address. This is another email that I sent from a server using PHP. It also has my IP address. And these are the particular clients that I just selected that are, eligible for this flaw. So you have Apple Mail, Outlook, Thunderbird, Lotus Notes if you're so unkempt to be still using that, Mutt, Mail, and PHP, etc. Any kind of scripts that send mail directly from your VPS or Linux box, they would also be doing that. That being said, if you are using a VPS and it is not something related to your organization or your direct IP address behind your firewall, you wouldn't get that problem with leakage. Same thing with webmail. Webmail masks all that because you're visiting Gmail, and then Gmail's the IP address it's seen. Or proxied clients. So if you're using Tor or whatnot, you can actually, prevent that from happening. So you can proxy, for example, on Mac or Linux, you can use proxy chains, proxy that to Tor, and then all those scripts that I was talking about, Mutt and Mail and whatever, would actually go through Tor, and then it would mask your IP address. You can also use anonymous VPNs, so you can use the same thing, proxy chains, or just using the proxy settings in Thunderbird or Outlook. Anonymous VPSs or IPv6. I've noticed that on my Verizon phone, it's actually using IPv6 now, and IPv6 is a little more difficult to track. I do know some people that are working on solutions for that, but it is a viable solution. So for stat counter, I actually ran a campaign for about 5 years. I didn't release the data because of privacy concerns and whatnot, but I was able to put that in the signature of my email and see who was opening it, what they were doing, how long they were looking at my emails for about 5 years without anybody raising a finger. So it's great for analytics and graphs. If you don't mind your data being sent to them, it would be a good thing for showing to your managers and saying, all right, here's these people that are clicking on these links, what have you. It can also show how long the individual looked at the email. It also shows how many clicks there were per day. It also shows country of origin. So as you can see from mine, it was United States mostly. Arlington area. You also have Google there, which I'll talk about in a minute. Roadrunner, Comcast. So it breaks down by the provider. So it could also trigger seeing where your users are actually visiting your emails from. Let me just see how we're doing on time. Okay, perfect. The other thing is that it will actually break out and figure out if it knows an IP address. For this particular instance, I was at UNC Charlotte's campus. It knows UNC Charlotte's IP address and it says, hey, University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Shows the time, goes down to the very city, shows it on a map. Very, very good graphs if you want to put it together and that such. It's also pretty easy to put together. You just do add project, give it a name, give it a project URL, select invisible tracker, and then it puts out some code for you. You select the default installation code, and then it spits out some Java. So, like Lindsay Lohan, this is kind of a hot mess. It's really, really dirty and trashy. You don't need to have all of it. Essentially, all you're looking for is the URL, because in email clients, they're mostly going to strip out all the JavaScript, so you're not going to get that advantage of analytic data. They're trying to get some additional stuff there that's not going to be relevant to you. So one thing that I found is you can just take that image tag that it gives you, copy that out, put it in Gmail, or just build an image tag yourself if you're using some other kind of scripting platform. And I actually have a tool later that I'll show you guys on how to do this yourself. But all you gotta do is throw that in there and it'll hit the server and you'll get your analytic data back. So for this particular example here, one thing to note is that in most cases, Gmail, Hotmail, and I think Yahoo is now actually doing this. They actually proxy all the images. So what that means is essentially you can see here you have Google-proxy and then the IP address and then google.com. So you're not going to get the actual IP address of the actual user. So you're going to have to do some other figuring out in order to figure out that they opened it, and that's what my tool does. It figures that out. So here's an example of me opening it in Gmail. That being said, if they were using Thunderbird with IMAP or Outlook or whatever client you love, you will get the IP address because of the image tag directly calling from the client to the server and not going through Google in that sense. So it's essentially know your environment, know who you're targeting, know what you're going after. That being said, I told you guys, I ran it for 5 years, didn't get detected. Eventually, one of my friends said, "What the heck's all this stuff at the end of your emails? Why is this essentially here?" And so I shut it down at that point in time. Yeah, a little embarrassing, but it worked. It was 5 years. Another thing that you can do if you're trying to get this is you can embed it in Word documents or Excel documents. So if you use the object key, it will actually still call out, and it will call to the server, and you get results like this. So the one at the very bottom is when I first made the object. The one at the top is the Microsoft Office existence discovery is unknown, but that's Outlook. I'm sorry, that's Microsoft Word calling out. So it's like the Microsoft Office suite, what it's calling out as, and the user agent, it figures out that it's that. And that's why it's for IE 11, because Microsoft loves IE, they are picking it up as the same user agent in some cases. But it's calling out if you open the attachment. And the way that this works, just for you guys that don't understand exactly what's going on here, essentially you have your HTML or you have your web page or you're just raw text in an email. But when you embed an image tag in an email, it actually calls to the direct server. And that server is now making a communication with your computer itself, with the exception of Google, of course. And so that's why we can actually get this information and understand what people are doing with the emails. So another trick that I found out as well is that you can use certain error codes in order to figure out what a valid email is. So you can sometimes do this via Netcat or Telnet, but there's NW Tools that has actually built scripts around doing this. So if you're trying to validate, what emails are actually correct, you can just put it in there and hit go, and then it will show, a OK email valid and then an invalid email as well. So you can see like the rejected host or rejected sender, depending on how they've scripted that. So that's another trick that you can do in order to kind of validate who you're sending email to, and so you don't have a whole bunch of balances. The other thing too is if there's no authentication on the server, this would be the way that you would go through and actually send something as if you were one of the people in the organization. So you can telnet into the server, you can issue the commands as if you were a user sending an SMT request, authenticate as that user, and then send it. So this was something that was happening at UNCC. I was able to actually authenticate as one of my professors, send an email. They've since fixed that, so that's why I'm disclosing it. But there are many servers on the internet that still do this and allow you to, hop in and send as an individual that's part of the company. So it's something to try. So now I'm going to hop over and show you guys a demo of a tool that I wrote that essentially packages the image tagging up and also allows you to be able to figure out, even on Gmail and Hotmail, did the user actually open the email? So it's called Feeling Phishy, and hopefully, yay, all right, cool. So, you guys see that okay? Too big, too small? Too small, all right. More pills, more pills. Make it bigger. Let's do presentation mode. All right, well, good. All right, let's see. Cool. All right, so what essentially this is, kind of read through, is essentially I've created two tags that you can send emails as, a link tag and an image tag. And what it's going to do is it's going to script a certain piece of that based on the email that you're sending it to, so that you can figure out who is actually opening the email and who is actually clicking on the email. And so this is, the goal of this is to be able, for you guys to be able to use this in your organizations to figure out what users are clicking on and, maybe do some, discovery. Yeah. Yep. The question was, is this essentially an old concept of a weblet? Yep. So the reason this came about was I had a friend of mine who, she essentially does pen tests. There was a Ruby tool out there that's open sourced. I'm not going to shame it or anything, but essentially it did not work very well. And then it was also very hard to set up and very outdated. So I figured, well, why don't I create something in PHP, and why don't I just go ahead and open source it and let you guys use it and let anybody use it to be able to do these campaigns so that they can figure out what their users are clicking on. Because there's a lot of companies that do this for loads and loads of money, but I want something that's going to be out there that the average consumer that's contracted to do a pen test that doesn't have a lot of money can be able to pick up and run with us. And hopefully it's something that if you guys feel that it's useful, you guys can complain to me and say, hey, this doesn't work well, this is bad. You can do pull requests on GitHub. I'll upload it later tonight. And it's something that we all can build together. And I'll build a lot on it as well, and improve on it as well. So for the basic concept of it is, you put in just the email, who it's from. So I have Mr. Smith here, smith@hardware.com, who I want to send it to. So apparently Siri doesn't get this, so she's having understanding problems. So I won't send it to Siri. I'll let her figure it out later. But anyways, you can send multiple emails by just putting a comma in. So I have JoshInGeneral +1 and JoshInGeneral +2. So you can send, Gmail just essentially strips the plus tag out allows you to receive it as well. Important message. You can select a date. So I figure out a way to send an email in the past or the future. For this particular one, we'll send it from the 18th. You can give it a random time, whatever you feel like. And then for the image, so when you click on it, you can give it an error code. And all these can be edited via the source code that I'll be releasing a little later tonight. So then there's an admin email. So I'm just going to send it to myself just for simplicity. And then you can also do a passphrase. So what this could be is if you had multiple pen testers and you wanted to divide out different campaigns. So if you wanted to do the accounting department and then you wanted to do HR as a separate campaign, you could essentially assign different passphrases for those. So I'm just going to do CarolinaCon for what we have here. Whoop. And then I also have used a thing called FCK editor so that you can add images and various different things. And there's also a template option here. So you can add HTML code in here and have ready-built templates. So if you guys that are pen testers, if you want to just go ahead and build up some templates that you know would be useful. One recommendation to me, I haven't actually implemented it yet, but was like a Outlook mail. Your mail has almost exceeded the limits that we are providing. You know, you click on that and then sign in, and you know you could use a separate site for the sign in to capture that. I may actually implement that feature as well, but I haven't gotten to that point yet. So as you can see here, I've selected the UPS template. It essentially says that there's a UPS package for you to pick up. You need to click here in order to confirm the pickup because it's going to be sent back. And I've just put some random data in here for sending it. I'll send the mail. Okay, cool. And then it gives you a full report. So it says, all right, so I sent an email to admin, from admin at feelingphishy.com to JoshInGeneral. And essentially this is just the, hey, this is what your key is. Here's how to get the results. And then for each email, it sends a report saying that the email was sent and what was sent. Notice here that the link is masked. That's just so you don't click on it yourself. As well as the image tag down here is also masked, so you're not having false positives. So Philip was talking to me earlier today. All right, so let's go back and see if we can get this to work. All right, so essentially here's the email. There is a click here to confirm, and then there's also a broken image tag that will be shown when you click images. So that's just a problem of it in of itself. You still got to click the view images in order to get that to work. All right, Philip. All right. Goodbye. So when I click it, it shows an error saying forbidden. You can't go to that. And you guys can modify this as such, but this is just stripped straight off of Apache, scripted so that the user thinks that, oh, well, there's a problem. You know, I wasn't able to get to it, whatever. If we go back to the site, and we go to results will be exported in CSV, you put in the key, and now you can see that at 7:40, essentially a user clicked on the link and also viewed the link. So you can see the Google image proxy right there. But here's the cool thing. So it actually MD5s the email, and for each individual person that clicks on the email, you now know who clicked on it because it has an actual tag. So I'll show you. If we come back over to the email, down here at the bottom, you'll notice that it has E equals 2, so that's error number 2. And then we also have the MD5 for some other things here, and then also a cache ID for the designating the actual tag, you know, for the campaign. So what that's doing is instead of just saying who clicked on the email or who viewed this email, it's actually targeting it to the individual person that you sent it to. So now you know, all right, user so-and-so did that. So that being said, MD5s don't really mean a lot to us, right? You know, we've got to have some way of decrypting that. So what you do is, because you don't want to leave this on the server, I've created a Python script that, as long as you know the emails that you were originally sending to, you essentially put them in an email file. So we have JoshInGeneral +1 +2. Then I create results.txt, put in my results that I got from the web server, and then hopefully, if this works correctly, we will go ahead and put in the input for the email list, and then we'll have the log file, which was results.txt, and I need to do that correctly. And there we go. So now you can see that there were particular emails. So JoshInGeneral +555 essentially was the one that was clicking on this. So out of the ones that I was doing, I actually logged the one for JoshInGeneral +5555. So now you know exactly who was clicking on it, and you can go to that user and say, why are you doing that? Why are you clicking on these links? Because you know, it's just kind of silliness. But so that's pretty much all I've got. You guys can find this at feelingphishy.com. Going back, for those of you that either came in late or weren't doing. So you can contact me if you have any questions. Let's see, how are we doing on time? We've got about 15 minutes, so I'll go ahead and talk about how I use this in order to do the Nigerian Phisher. So essentially, what I did is I made a custom campaign of this. This is before I had written the tool. I was selling my Xbox online. I'd gotten over Black Friday, and I was just trying to make a little extra money, you know, selling it on Craigslist. So, as many of you probably know, there's tons of Nigerians that try to scam you out of things on Craigslist. So I got hit up by this Nigerian, and he was like, "Hey, is the Xbox in new condition?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course it is." And it's kind of weird. Why are they asking that? I specifically said that in the in the message. So he says, "All right, well, I'll go ahead and buy it, and I'm going to send you an extra $100 because I have a friend that I'm going to be sending this to in another country." So that was automatically my tip. I was like, something's up with this. So I play along, and he says, "Okay, hey, it's going to be UPS, and I'm going to send it through PayPal. It's going to be confirmed. Once you pay for the shipping, I'm going to know, and then I'll go ahead and put the other $400 in your account." So I get this email. It was really interesting because the email actually loaded the images right away. And my guess is because it was using some kind of proxying through Google. I don't quite understand why. But it looked pretty official. This is everything. It says PayPal at the top. It's got images. It's, it says, confirmed. It's pretty well written. But then it has this thing that says PayPal on hold. Or payment on hold, sorry. And so essentially it's saying that, I need to put money in and I need to click on the link. So they actually give me a real link for paying for the shipping. So, and he's got his real information down there, or wherever he's going to be picking it up. So I'm like, all right, well, let me see if I can get him to click on a link through text message. So I essentially create a similar thing to what I did in my logging app, and I put it on Dropbox. And then I put an iframe on Dropbox. And so essentially there was an iframe that hit a burner server that I had just set up, a PHP one-on-one hosting thing, whatever. And then I embedded it in the Dropbox and sent him the link and said, "Hey, I'm having a lot of trouble getting this payment to work. Can you take a look at it?" And so I had essentially clicked on the link because I knew it was regular PayPal. I did the right-click, inspect element, changed all the addresses so it wasn't my actual PayPal information, and made it look really real. So he clicked on it. And you know, so this is essentially kind of what I sent him and what it looked like. And there's the code right there, so you can see Dropbox images. And I created a Net64, so it looks, you know, like a CDN or something like that. And here's the interface for that. And then so these were the fields that I was interested in. So essentially, I was trying to collect his IP address, any kind of user agent information, and where he had come from. So I created another script that would email me as soon as the hit had happened, and that's what that was right there. If you guys are interested in that, you can send me an email, and I'll forward it to you as well. And so I was able to get his IP address and user agent through that. And so I started doing Googling, and I found that he was on a scammers list. Someone had received an email from him as well with the same IP address. I found out that the HoneyNet project had also found him as well. And I also found out that he had logged into this African.cc with a PHP shell. And the PHP shell had been archived by Google so that I could actually see him logging into it under the essentially netstat option on the PHP shell. So it was kind of an interesting situation. So I did some more research, and I found out that the IP address that he was using was actually for a mobile phone provider in Nigeria, located in this general location. I found some more information that other people had been receiving a lot of hits from this same IP address. And here's the information from the PHP shell, so you can see where he was sending mail, and this was like a netstat kind of thing. And then I started doing more research, and so what I found was that in Nigeria, they use phones for a lot of things, and on the forums that they actually use, they post the entire IP address. So if you were able to track an individual down at the right time, and they were posting at the same time, you could essentially track them down. They would have their Facebook information on those sites as well, because they're trying to get as much revenue, and then you could do cross-pollination as well. So here's the problem, though, where it breaks down. So a lot of it was old information, so I wasn't actually able to target him. But I just wanted to show you guys how this kind of worked, and if you had the information, and it lined up correctly, you could go through and do it, and possibly find someone. So I wasn't as lucky, but I was able to find some remnants. The general deductions that I came to was that this is probably someone that's operating kind of like a small Nigerian spamming company, because there was other people that had different profiles under that same IP address, or that the IP address had just been recycled through the phone company. And they had a certain block, and then other people were getting that and posting online, and they weren't actually really spammers. So those are the deductions that I came to. One of the things to know is that attribution is really hard, but you can still do certain things. And if you were able to get an email address, get a user agent, and an IP address, you can search online and find some sorts of things. So of course there are ways to turn all this off, but I mean that's pretty much all I got. So I don't know how we're doing on time. I've got another 50. Okay. Yeah. So if anybody has any questions or has any questions about the tool that I created, or got a question over there.
Just to clarify, your method of getting past the Google image proxy is to just create HTTP error code?
No, so it's actually calling to, so it's calling to a PHP file, and the way that I'm getting around it is not necessarily that I'm getting around it per se, it's just that I'm attributing a certain tag in that image tag so that I know who clicked and who visited the image. So in other words, if they open the email and they don't click view images, I'm not going to get anything. So that's where it breaks down. But if they click view images, then that image tag is going to make a call to my server, which has a PHP file that's listening for that, and then it'll log it to a file, and then I can get it because there's a specific tag that has an MD5 of the email that I had, and I will log that and know that they viewed that image. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? Oh, go.
Aside from user education, you know, from an endpoint perspective, what anti-phishing tools have you seen are the most successful? I know EPO has an anti-phishing component, Symantec has that as well, but what do you see as being the most successful?
Yeah, so I've seen that Symantec works pretty well. I mean, there's also Barracuda, which is an option. But I mean, I haven't actually been able to like hit all the enterprise solutions. Really, you should have someone that's dedicated on your team to be looking at this. And there were also some really good talks at DerbyCon a few years back, where essentially some of the organizations actually have someone that's constantly phishing their users. And one of the coolest things that I heard was not necessarily like you're going to try to attack it from a technology solution, but attack it from more of a user awareness, because you never know when someone from like a nation state is going to try to do a spear phishing attack and be successful. So if you can train your users to question all of their emails, and the way that they... Somebody really calling me right now? Rude, rude, rude. And I bet I know who it is. Sorry about that. But yeah, so going back to that. So essentially what they did was they would do a pre-phishing email saying, hey, we're going to be phishing you. Here are the things that you need to be looking for in an email that would be, subject to phishing. So looking at weird headers, looking at spelled incorrectly. Did you actually request that someone send you that PDF? Those kinds of things. And then they would phish their users, and then they would go back and they would have a reward campaign. So essentially, the users that reported the phishing to the security department would get rewards. So maybe like a $50 gift card to Starbucks or something like that. So that would essentially cause the users on a daily basis to be looking and saying, all right, maybe this isn't phishing, maybe this is phishing, I should just go ahead and report it. And so they would be aware, and they'd be thinking, okay, well, I'm going to get phished at any time. And that really helped cut down more than buying $10,000 or $100,000 worth of equipment. Because at the end of the day, people are going to be the weakest link, and they're the ones that are going to make the decision whether they, some of them will go in the quarantine thing and say, oh yeah, I'd love to get a free iPod, and they're just going to do that. And Symantec does that. It'll send you a notification, hey, you've got a quarantine message, and unless you as a system administrator are constantly checking those, they can still go in there and click on those links. It raises the awareness, but yeah. Yes, sir. All right, very good. Well, thank you, sir.